Hi, how are you all? Thank you for joining. Today we are going to discuss a topic about IAM. What is Identity and Access Management? IAM is an identity and access management system. This is designed for accessing all the resources in the networking system. So identity is a kind of uh, it's a subject and it's a identity of a person or a service or a resources. So it's an identity that is matter when you are accessing some resources. So resources something can be a physical and or something logical. Physical resource kind is like accessing some premises, and logical resources is accessing some folder, accessing website, apps, accessing applications. So it's IAM, it's a framework and a policies and a technology ensuring that correct appropriate access is given to the particular resources. So the key component of IAM is an identification. Who the user is, what he is, what is his identity. For example, one person, his name is John. So that is a person, its name is identity. The name itself is an identity for that particular person. So that person, if he want to access a premise or a school, so he has to present himself in that premise, and he has to identify himself that I am John. Based on his request, based on his earlier request that he want to access the premise of the school, so the access will be given to him based on his request. There'll be a background check will be there. For what reason the person want to access the premise. So based on that background check, he will be giving the access. So this is how the access procedure works. Similarly, in system, the access work basically in that area, that if a person want to access some certain folder, certain application, the verification will take place for why it has been required the access. Based on his job profile, the access is required and the access will be granted. So now that is called a authentication process. So the user will be having a username and a password. So this is the mechanism, this is the basic mechanism where authentication will take place. If he has given the username and the password, then it will be getting authenticated. He will be able to access the resources what he is required for. So third thing is authorization. Authorization is something what resources access has been given, what has been authorized to have. Basically, totally depend on the role. So what role is required for that particular person? For example, if a person as an employee joins in HR, so he will be getting all the access, all the permissions related to HR folder, related to HR applications only. He will not be able to access sales related data or any other product related data because his role is in HR. So that is called authorization. We are authorizing a authenticated person to access the data based on his role only. And the fourth thing is accounting. Accounting is basically a tracking a user actions and the usage of the resources. How much time he has spent on that, accessing the resources, what all the activities he has done. Everything will be getting captured in the log as an audit trail. This will be used later on to identify what all the things he has done, if he has uh, done any wrong thing if we have done, or any deleted any file or folder, or done some mistake, that will get captured for later analysis. So so key component of IAM is identification. Okay, it's called an identity. It will be a username, a password, or a token or biometrics. And there are three things, three technology which is authentication, authorization, and accounting. Authentication will allow the person to access. Authorization will provide the access only certain areas based on the role and the permission. Accounting, what will it will does, it will track the record. It will track all the actions, all the time, what activity user has done. Based on that, it will get captured in the log. So in authentication, there are many ways of authentication to authenticate a person in a logical scenario. For example, in a physical scenario, we will see the person's name and his physical appearance. So based on that, his name and physical appearance, or his photograph, or his iCard, based on that iCard, the the door will give an access. If he has an access card to access the door, to access the premises, he just tap that card, processing card, and he taps that, he will get the access to the premises. Similarly, to access the logical resources in the sense, a website is a logical resource, a system, a network, or infrastructure access, or a folder or a file. This all comes under logical access. If you want an logical access, there are multiple authentication mechanism available, and that can be implemented. Why multiple authentications are available? To secure the environment. Only password-based authentication cannot be used to secure. Password, it's can be breakable, can be hacked, or can be used. So this is a single point of failure. If one password is breached, anybody can take that password and he can log in and get the access to the resources. So to avoid this, there is a technology called multi-factor authentication, which is implemented. That is combination of two or two things. One is like password, and second is token, and third is biometrics. So password is what I know, and token is something what I have. Biometrics is also something what I am having. So if there are multiple factors are available to access some resources, then it is a high chance of securing that resources. If one factor fails, okay, or breach, so there is a second factor which support the stoppage of it will support that if malicious actor trying to hack a system or resource, if he gets basic password, so he will not be able to access, because there is a second level of password, which is a token, or which is a biometric. So the threat actor will have only one level of password. So he will not be having a token or a biometrics. So hence, he will not be able to bypass that factor, bypass that authentication, and he cannot able to access. So this will block, multi-factor authentication will block this kind of malicious activities. So an example, login in a company email using a password and receiving a one-time code on the phone. So receiving an OTP, it's a one-time password, it will get on the phone. So based on that phone, on that code password, he will able to log in. Then authorization. Authorization is something you are granting an access to a resources based on his role. So whatever his role is there, predefined role is there. Like if the person join in HR, so his role is belongs to HR. So he will be getting predefined or pre-approved policies, whatever the applications belongs to HR, like HR payroll. He will be able to access HR payroll and HR folder and HR website. Apart from this, any other system, if he is having access, network, infrastructure, or some other area, he will not be able to access. This is predefined. Authorization is given by the business as per the process, as per the policy. So, So there is a access control. There are access controls are available, role-based access control, attribute-based access control, and there are many controls which will be going to speak further. What is role-based access? Role-based is access. From the word role itself, will come to know what kind of access control will be there. A role, like a person is in sales, he is in HR, he is in marketing, he is in any other department, so long and so forth. So if it's in sales, the person, he will be only getting the sales related data only, how much sales happen to that particular product. And if the person is in services, he will be getting only the data related to service only and the application related to service only. Fine. And attribute based access control, ABAC, is based on the department and the location. Like say if an organization has a geographically placed department in the globe, so that person who is in Asia or is in Europe or US, he will be getting based on that area. If a person of a user joined in area in US, he will be getting folder application related to that region only. He will not be able to access folder and the application related to Asia region. So this is called attribute based access control. Then it comes accounting. Accounting is a record keeping, like I said before, it keeps all the track of all the accesses given by the done by user with all the time, how much, what access, what resources he has taken or access for a long period of time. Everything will be getting recorded and it will get into the system. So for that, later on, we can come to know what are the things has been done by that particular user for compliance or troubleshooting issues. Then real-time example for identification, authorization, authentication, and accounting. For example, you provide a password one-time SMS login into the bank system. He uses the username password with multi-factor authentication as a OTP one-time password via SMS. He'll be using that code. Once he logs in with that code, he'll be able to see his account detail, transfer fund, but not able to access the other accounts. So that restriction is there. He will not able to access the other account. That restriction is there. So that is given on the authorization part. And accounting, again, the bank keeps a record of login, when it is login, what action he has taken, how much fund he has transferred. So this all comes under accounting so that later on it can be used in terms of any discrepancy or any compliance issue or any security issues. So in the real life in the corporate, how identification, authentication, authorization, and accounting will happen is just in a complete email. A person joins in company and he logs in with his email ID. So user has to give his username and password, authenticate himself with multi-factor authentication. In this scenario, fingerprint is there. A second factor authentication is fingerprint. So based on his fingerprint, he can able to log into the system on his email. And authorization, he can only send emails at access company directories and cannot access confidential file. That means he can only sends email and access whatever the folder pertaining to his file in his email, he will able to get that. Others users email, other folders, he'll not be able to access other folders. Accounting, again, the system log will generate email and access to the shared resources. This all will be generated for later to see the compliance part. So IAM tools and technologies. So there are many tools and technologies used in IAM so that the system will be secure. Like there's a Microsoft Active Directory. This is an Active Directory users and computers, this is the technology is used to authenticate. It's a domain where where the user has been created. Based on the user creation, password is generated. Based on the user and password authentication, it will happen and the resources will be getting access. So this is one kind of authentication. There's an OTCA authentication is there, ping identity is there, RSA token is there. RSA token, again, it's a token mechanism where a random number is being generated based on the timeline, and it is been synced with the server, and the server authenticates the number, and then it allows the access. So this is the two-factor authentication. The purpose is to automate and manage IAM tasks like provisioning users, setting up the access control and behavior, monitoring the behavior. So this all are mechanism to streamline the process of accessing the company's resources. So benefit of IAM is reducing the risk of unauthorized access. Like if the person is in the umbrella of IAM and identity management, so only that person will be able to access the resources. Otherwise, other person will not be able to access. And if it's a efficiency, it's there. Automates user account management. Like if you create one account, and if you have role-based access, all the groups, all the roles, he will get automatically all the access. And compliance part, this is met. There is a compliance GDPR, HIPAA, and there are many compliance NIST, ISO 27001 standards. These all standards are required to have IAM implementation in the organization. And again, accountability, you can track log user activities for audit trail purpose. So IAM is critical for securing companies' resources, managing identities. It helps authorize users to get access, provide accountabilities and actions, as I discussed earlier. So challenges in IAM is like managing identities across multiple systems. That is a challenge, and ensuring the strong authentication method. Again, it's a two-factor authentication. So ensuring that users should have convenience for using a strong password, and using a multiple factor authentication, and keeping track of users permissions and role changes. So that is the challenge. Like if the person changes from one role to another role, so that is a challenge which most of the applications are getting covered. Like SailPoint. SailPoint is an application it's an IAM application where you change the role. When you change the role, all the role from one department to another department, all the accesses from previous department, previous role will get deleted, and the new role will be assigned. There's a feature in the application. With that, this issue will be resolved. Then importance of identity in modern organization, like I said, who's the access, what action has been performed, rights account. This all are part of IAM. So identity, as I said before, it's a claim. It's a subject, a people, device, or system, or application. So attributes of that particular person or device or system, it's an attribute. If, for example, if a person, his name is there'll be his name, or his age, or his role, or his trait, like his height, place of birth. That is all comes under attributes for that particular person. Subjects use different mechanism to claim their identities. How identities are claimed? So there are mechanism how where we can claim the identities, like username, certificates, token, SHS key, smart cards. So this all are the authentication method which can use to authenticate. Like username is a simple identification. Okay, so that username can be used, but not as an authentication factor. It is not an authentication factor. Authentication factor will come when you have another mechanism to authenticate that same person. Then it will become an authentication factor. So second is certificate. Certificates digitally identified for system or individuals. Certificates is something which has been issued by the server. Like PKI environment is there, where a server will issue a certificate. a trusted certificate, and that certificate is installed on the client. So when when the client want to access any user want to access a website, okay, from the PC, so the PC should have the certificate which is issued from the server. So that server, that client, we have to install manually, we have to install that certificate. When we start accessing the website, it will go and initiate the certificate authority and access the server certificate authority, and then communicate between each other in an encrypted way. This is all encrypted way, and it will negotiate, and it will see the certificate validity, and it will provide the access to the website. So this is a certification in detail. I'll be able to explain in the next slide. I will be able to tell you the detail about next or how certificate works. Their certificate is there in all the mechanism. I will just later on I will explain. Tokens. Tokens are physical device uh, like RSA token, and USB token. Like if there is an application specific tokens, I'll develop an application. So that application I will make in an application, I'll make a system that only the person who has the USB token connected to the PC, then only the application will work. Otherwise, the application will not work. So that programming I will do on my application. So if I get hold of my application also, so the application will not work. You cannot able to open the data because the application required a physical token, a USB physical token. That token will have a embedded chip which will have a communication with that application. Based on the communication, the token will allow an application to open. So that token, physical token is required, which is get connected on the local PC through USB drive. Then only the application you will be able to open with that token. Then SSH key, again it's a certificate based only. It's an SSH key, cryptographic key pairs to replace username and password. Okay, so this is again a cryptographic public key, private key, and scenario will be in the picture. So how this cryptographic works basically, there'll be a there will be a key generated by the system, by the application, ba- private key, okay, and there is a one public key. So there's public key will be publicly available, okay. So I will use my private key and a public key to encrypt the data and then send across to the my next client. So the client, what he will do to give the access, he will take his private key and public key and then encrypt and then decrypt, and then he will see the message. This is how in a brief, this is how encryption happens through SSH key. So then after that, it's a smart card embedded chip with cryptographic functionality. Again, smart card is there, which will when you there's a device on the laptop or PC, or there are many devices which are there, which smart card reads the data on the chip, which is encrypted, and based on that encryption algorithm, it will give the access. So these are all the claims how you can identify yourself and access based on this mechanism. Then authentication, again, it's a process to identify a subject, and it's a subject who is claiming that I am the appropriate person to have access. The common method is password, biometrics, and multi-factor authentication. Authorization, again, role-based access control. Manage privilege account management. Privilege account access management is something like previous slides we were discussed about the user access, where the resources are required based on the business need. And this is something privilege. This is something high level access. We should have more restriction. We should have more restriction. Like we should have more than multi-factor authentication. So there is an condition. There is a technology called PAM, Privilege Access Management. There is an application which manage this technology. So what will happen if an administrator is it's a administrator has a password. So that password, we cannot keep the password with one person. So because if I keep a password with one person, so that will become a conflict of interest. So we cannot have a proper mechanism what that person would have done with the username and password of the administrator. So that required additional monitoring. So it's a high level of access which can be misused if the person if the password is used. So what will happen based on based on the technology, the application, the technology, what it does, it gives the administrator access, it encrypt the password, and it will keep in the vault. The password administrator, it will keep in the vault, and it will give the access based on the requirement, how long the administrator access is required. Like like in a system. So system administrator, why the password is required? To monitor, to see the logs, to configure any system, and to see why the system is not working. So the administrator will be will require the password for few hours or few minutes. So he cannot use the password for long time, for 1 week or 2 weeks. So to avoid this, giving the password permanently to the administrator, to avoid this, to avoid unauthorized use, the method is there: just in time access, password vaulting, am- behavioral credentials. This all process is there where we can control of accessing the high level password. So just in time access is what we can uh, provide a window for half an hour or 15 minutes. A system will give us a window where he can access with the administrator privilege account, and he will be not be able to access with the administrator password. He will be able to log in with his own username and password as a user. So he will log in, he will get the screen of administrator where the system itself will log in with the administrator with with the random generated password by the system for a specific time. And again, password vaulting, the password of the administrator will be vaulted in the random generated message, and that cannot be seen, or that cannot be and cannot be used by the normal user. So these are the process where we can use the password. And again, life cycle. Once we have identified, once we have given the access, authorize, authenticate, and accountability happen. So there will be a life cycle. So we have to provision. We have to create the account when the person join, our user join in an organization based on his role. So the life cycle will start from provisioning, identify, proofing, federation, and then deep provisioning. Provisioning is kind of creation of account. So once a person joined, we create the ID, we verify his identity, we provide the authorization, we provide role-based access based on his role. A predefined access will be given to him. And there is a federation process called cross-organization identity management. Basically, what it does, if you have a two organization, so what the two organization will do, one person is having an account in like say X organization. He's accessing all the resources, and he want to access in B organization all his resources. So then what we have to do, we have to create another account for that. So there'll be hassle of managing two accounts. So that will fail. That if you have two account, so that the concept of IAM will fail. The concept of IAM is to streamline the identity, to streamline the access, to access the resources. If I have two authentication user mechanism, so there'll be a lot of issues by the user, how he will able to manage the user, how he'll remember the user name and password, and multi factor authentication as well. So what this federation will federation will help based on the identity. It will it will build a trust with another organization in application. Based on that trust mechanism, it will allow the access to the X user on that federation. And the deprovisioning, again, the person uh, resigns from the company or is been terminated, his access will be removed. So if one area, if the access is removed, deleted, all the accesses from all the resources or from all the application will get removed. So disable also, if once we have disable in IAM, it will get disable in all the application. This how this lifecycle management works. Then IAM works on a principle of single sign-on and federation. Likewise, I have said federation I've already discussed is a trust mechanism between two organizations. And similarly, there's a single sign-on mechanism which is trusted between each application. Like there'll be a multiple services, multiple application in an organization. One application is for loan, another application is for accounting, another application is for SAP based application. My system of accessing my personal HR, my data of my leave. So this all multiple application is there. So if I have multiple credentials for accessing multiple users, then there'll be a problem for a user to keep a track of all the authentication username and password. So to avoid this issue, there's a mechanism called single sign-on. In this single sign-on, what will happen? User has to remember only one username and the password, and if multi-factor authentication is implemented, that needs to be used. So only one credential is used across all the platform, across all the application to gain access in all the application. So to support single SSO, single sign-on, there's a technology, there's a protocol used, there's SAML, security assertion, markup language, and OAuth, open authentication, OpenID, decentralized authentication. So this SAML in detail, in depth, in next slide, I'll be able to explain you how SAML and OAuth and OpenID will work, how federation will allow system on trust basis. I'll be able to explain you on the next slides. So federation, again, it's a cross access authentication, cross domain from one organization to another organization. For example, if I give an example in the in a Google case, if I am having access an account on Google or Gmail, there's an access. And if I am using a third-party application on the website, and if I try to log in, it will ask you to create an account. And second option, it will ask you to create an do you want to use a Google account to authenticate yourself? If you say yes, so the Google authentication will go and it will authenticate you, authenticate with your username and password, and it will take that authentication and password to the third party application. And then based on the OAuth protocol or OpenID Connect, it will give access to the third party application. So this is how it works, and identity provider provides a credentials, act as an authenticates your credentials, and send that authentication to third party application, and based on that trust mechanism on OAuth protocol or OpenID protocol, it will give you the access. If that is not the case, if it doesn't receive the valid authentication, so it will not grant the access. So there are various identity association methods are available. Like I said before, token is there, SHS is there. So these are the use cases where which we can use. For certificate case, there is a smart card will be used for encryptions and secure communication. For in like an corporate environment where employee uses detailed certificate to access the secure mail server. The certificate will verify the employee's identity, ensuring that only authorized person can send and receive the sensitive email. So this is the use case of using certificate. And there's a use case of using the token. Token is kind of authentication mechanism, a second layer of protection, whereas a time-based authentication is there. For example, RSA token. RSA token, if I am using the username and the password, and it will ask for the second factor authentication, where it will ask for the time-based password. So I have to see the token, the name appears in 1 second. It appears for it will be there for 1 minute. So I have to use that number, and in combination with the username and password, that will allow me the access. A use case as a company implement token-based authentication where employee must enter username and password and a hardware RSA code application. This will allow you the access. And then SSH, again, it's a secure cryptographic keys used to secure the server with a public key and private key combination. This will allow to access the server. Like in the use case, a system administrator, SSH key pair is if it is accessing through cloud, as a key pair is there. Based on the private key, the password, it will get generate the password, and then it will streamline the login process. It will generate the secret key, and then it will allow to access the server. And again, smart card. Smart card, again, it's a physical card. It's a embedded microchip store on that chip, and that is been used. It will read the cryptographic key pair on that card, and it will match the keys on the server, and then it will get authenticate. Like for example, financial institution use smart card for employee, and then it when you enter the card, and it will ask for the pin. Enter the pin, it will authenticate, and it will give the access. Similarly, in the bank ATM, ATM is also a smart card functionality chip embedded on that. You insert the chip on the ATM, it sends the card information, and it asks for the authentication pin. When you put the pin, it will synchronize the pin with the authentication card, and then it will give the access. Okay, so the summary of user certificates, token, SHS key, and smart card. This all the definitions where it is where it has been used, how it is defined, and so and so forth, which is already I've already discussed in the previous slides. Okay. Authentication authorization technologies, like we discussed, triple triple A stands for authentication, authorization, and accounting. Okay, so there's a technology. There are many technologies. We will discuss four technology here: EAP, CHAP, TACACS, and Kerberos. So this all protocol where we can which are used to authenticate and authorize. So EAP stands for Extensible Authentication Protocol. So this has been used in for wireless authentication. If you have wireless network, so that network uses uh, extendable EAP protocol. So this will use as an authentication factor. So it has a radius server. Communication is done with the radius server, which has a digital certificate. So what will happen if you have a digital certificate? We need to install in all the laptops or PC wherever we want to access the internet. So once I install a certificate, and if I gets connected to the Wi-Fi, once it get connected, the Wi-Fi will request for the ask for the certificate. The laptop will present the certificate. The radius server will ask for a challenge to the client. The client will respond with the certificate, which is verified against the server certificate. So the two certificate will be verified between each other from the client as well as from the server. So mutual authentication will happen. If server successfully verifies the certificate, it will respond with its own certificate to the client. The client verifies the server certificate and establish this trust. Once the trust is established, and then authentication will happen and it will allow the access. So this is a secure way of accessing the uh, internet or a Wi-Fi of a company. In this, why it is secure? Because there is no password mechanism in this. There is no password. Password has been hacked or some password in use. So no, the password hacking is like chances of password is not getting used in this. So only the certificate is installed. So the if the laptop is there with the certificate, so with based on the certificate, the authentication process is happening. Then second is CHAP. It's a challenge handshake authentication protocol. CHAP. It's an authentication protocol. Again, it's a kind of mechanism where challenge and response take place. Basically, it's a process, three-way process to authenticate by the client. Client tries to connect to the server, attempts to connect to the server. Server sends a random string, okay, to challenge to the client. The client users send a unique authenticate session, ensuring that the replay attack chances will be mitigated. So there will not be replay attack because a session is been established between client and the server. So whatever the session is been established between the client and server, the password has been shared and it has been hashed in the algorithm called MD5. Hash in the sense it will be encrypted. It will hash, and if somebody tries to get that hash and that hash, if you decode, he will not be able to understand what the password is. So based on the hashing algorithm, the server will decrypt from the hash from the server itself, and it will authenticate and it will allow the client to access the server. So this how all the CHAP authentication works. It's a three-way authentication with hashing algorithm. This is how it will work. Then there is another mechanism called TACACS, Terminal Access Controller Access System Plus. So this is also one kind of access mechanism which is used in networking infrastructure like routers, switches, firewall. If one person or administrator want to access a router, so he has to use this TACACS mechanism to access the router to do the configuration. Similarly, router and switches also will get access based on this mechanism. So in this is TACACS is a propriety of Cisco, made by Cisco, and it has been used in all the device of the Cisco's router, switches, and firewall. So this also again use encryption methodology. There's a multiple authentication is happening, username and password, and a token-based system and a biometrics will happen. It will role-based access. What role a person is required, whether the role of administrator only to access and see the log of the router, switches, and firewall, or if you want to configure the switch, the firewall router, there'll be a separate role for that particular person. If you assign that role, he will be able to change the system configuration, router configuration, switches configuration, and firewall configuration. So how at Tekaka's work is just it provides a credential. The credential is authenticated based on the servers containing their credential. Once the or response is been received by the server, it will authenticate and it will verify the authentication and it will authorization. How it will work? It will give you the predefined role based access and he will get the access. Again, this is a scenario where managing a net access to the network device in an organization. This is it's a use case which has been used in this. First, so we need to set up a TechAccess server and then configure the device with authentication, create an account, and then administrator will try to log in with the user and password to authenticate himself. And once authentication process is completed, authorization check will happen. What kind of role he needs to be given? Read only mode is required, or change configuration mode is required. Based on the role defined, he will get access, and the session will get logged. So whatever the access has been granted, what role has been given, authorization has been given, this all the session will be getting recorded, so that that can be used in the for auditing purpose. Now this file and folder access management permission is there. So we have spoken access management for system, for infrastructure, a networking system. Now we have an access management for a file permission. Like if we have a folder in a Windows, or in some server, or in some Linux machine. So how we will access? If the folder is created, data is there, my Excel file is there, my Word file is there, my presentation file is there. So all my related files are stored in one folder, and that folder I need an access. So that access has been defined, predefined, and we cannot, organization cannot give access to all folders to all the people. That will be a breach of security. That will be a breach of compliance. So to avoid this, there's a control mechanism in place for accessing the folders. So what are the mechanism? There's a mandatory access control MAC, DAC, and RBAC. So mandatory access control is a mandatory based on his predefined role. Like I said before, if HR person he want to have access, he will get only HR related folder. He will not be able to access sales related, or marketing related, or compliance related folder. He will not be able to access. He will only be able to access HR related folder only. So discretionary access control, it's a control which is totally depend upon the person, or a organization, or a department to whom they want to give access. If HR folder, if they want to give access to like say to IT, for to identify how many users are joined, what are the access they want to have access. So for business purpose, for cross functional activity purpose, it's up to the organization, up to the department, whether they want to give access or not. So that is totally depend upon the department to department. And then third is role-based access. I've said before, based on the role, the access will be provided to the user. There's an again Kerberos is there is an again an authentication mechanism where it has been used in Microsoft Active Directory. Uh, it's a powerful authentication mechanism. So I'll be telling you about how the authentication happens. What are the components it's been used in this uh, authentication. Like if a person logins to the Windows PC, and he has to give his username and the password and the domain name. So based on the domain, and based on the username and then the password, it gets login. So how it gets login? It's used as a Kerberos. Okay. The Kerberos has a two main components. One is authentication server AS, and second is ticket granting server TGS. So what authentication server does is authenticate users and issue ticket, granting ticket. It's a ticket is been used. This all are session based. It has been session has been created between authentication server and the client. So authenticated users and issues ticket, granting ticket, this TGS. This issues ticket, service ticket to user to for accessing various services in the network. So this is a TGS. This TGS I can use once I log in. Once I get TGS from authentication server from AS, so I will get a TGS. With the help of this TGS, I can go and access any resources on the network, on a domain. If I am having access to one particular folder on a file, so I will go to that location, to that folder. I will present my TGS. It will it will see the session, how it has been authenticated from the AS server and from the ticket granting ticket. It will allow you to access that folder. So based on that session. So that session is already connected. So if I have access to the group, or that group is given access to some resources, so that group will see what authentication, what session he has, whether he has the TGS to access that particular resource. Based on that permission, it will allow the access. So this is the way the session Kerberos authentication will happen. And then principal is an entity, user, or services that can be authenticated by Kerberos system. Each application has a unique identity and a corresponding secret key. So it will have a unique and a corresponding secret key that will be a session wise generated, and it will be active throughout your authentication. So ticket is to prove identity. Okay, there will be two type. One is ticket granting, which is already discussed, and then a service ticket issued by the TGG for a specific service after the TGT has been presented. Okay, how this Kerberos work? Uh, the user logs in the client machine, request for TGT from AS. Client sends a request containing the user ID, the name, and the desired realm from the domain, and it will issue a TGT encrypted with KDC secret key. The client uses the TGT to request access to a specific service from the TGS. The client sends the TGT and the service ID to the TGG. So this is the mechanism how it works. So if if a person is having access in the group, and in a group access is there. So if a person leave the organization, so if he is having access in a one AD Active Directory group, and the person resigns, if we disable the ID, still the TGT is valid. Till the TGT is valid. If somebody enable the ID and access, so he will be able to access the folder or resources. So the best practice is to delete the ID on the Active Directory. So this is the reason where we need to delete the Active Directory. So how Kerberos work, this already discussed, and use case. Uh, it's in a use case where a user alias laptop sends a request KDC AS to obtain TGT after verification from Office credential. Then AS issues a TGT that is valid for a specific time period. Okay, and then LS want to access file server to retrieve some informant data from the laptop. So her laptop sends a TGT along with the service ID to the file server. The TGT validates with TGT and issues a service ticket for the file server. This ticket is encrypted and contains a session key that will communicate securely with the file server. So this is how uh, service ticket to the file server along with the authentication request, the file server verifies the ticket and grant allies access to the requested file. This is how the use case of accessing the file with the TGT token. Again, benefit of uh, Kerberos in this scenario, single sign-on is there, secure authentication is there, centralized management is there. Okay, so how single sign-on? He allies want to have access to multiple folders, multiple resources, multiple application. So he has to present as a single sign-on, one-time username. So he will get access to multiple users. And the secure authentication, how it happens, it's an encryption ticket and the credential is been used. If somebody eavesdrop and replay ticket, it cannot be done. It cannot be because the session has been encrypted. So it's a centralized management. KDC will allow IT administrator to manage users access efficiently and enforce security policy. We can centrally manage the KDC and enforce the security policies on the from the system registry system. Hope uh, hope you will understand IAM. This why IAM is required. So there is an application which has been used for to access the system. So we need to so that there is a streamline access for all the resources in the organization.